There's a crow that's been showing up in your yard for weeks now, maybe months, and you've barely registered it as anything more than background noise. You assumed it was just passing through. One yard among hundreds in its territory, nothing personal about it. You were wrong. That crow knows your face. It knows your routine. It knows roughly what time you leave the house, which door you use, whether you're the kind of person who tosses out food or walks past without a glance. It has been watching you carefully, consistently, over a long stretch of time, with a level of attention that genuinely unsettles most people the first time they understand the scale of it. And if you have ever done something that upset it, even once, even completely by accident, it almost certainly hasn't forgotten. This is what birds know. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Today we're going deep into the crow, widely considered the most intelligent wild bird in the North American backyard. The one that remembers faces, holds grudges, teaches its own children what it has learned, and has been quietly building a detailed picture of you, your habits, and your character for far longer than you've probably assumed. There are several specific things worth knowing about exactly what a crow sees when it looks at you. And the last one changes how you think about every bird in your neighborhood, permanently. This is not folklore, and it isn't people projecting human traits onto an animal that doesn't have them. This is one of the most repeated, most replicated findings in modern animal cognition research. In a landmark study conducted at the University of Washington, researchers wore specific identifiable masks while capturing and briefly handling wild crows on campus. A mildly stressful experience for the birds involved before they were released unharmed. The researchers then returned to the same area wearing those same masks again, doing nothing threatening at all, simply walking through. The crows responded immediately with alarm calls, aggressive dive bombing, and by actively recruiting other crows nearby to join the harassment. This continued for years. When researchers who had never personally worn the masks or interacted with those crows put them on and walked the exact same routes, they received identical treatment. The crows had transferred the information. They had taught it to other crows, including young birds born well after the original incident, to recognize and react to one specific human face they had never personally encountered. That is not instinct. That is learned, transmitted, cultural knowledge. Passed from one bird to another the way information moves through any community with memory. The implications for your own backyard are significant. Every interaction you have ever had with the crows in your neighborhood has been logged. Not vaguely, specifically. If you've ever chased one off, thrown something in its direction, or made a loud, sudden noise near one, that information exists somewhere in your local crow community. And it has almost certainly been shared with others. The crow that visits your yard regularly is not simply passing time there. It is gathering information, continuously, the way it has been built to do, for its entire life. Crows are what researchers call neophilic, drawn powerfully to novelty, to new objects, new situations, new individuals entering their territory. But they pair that curiosity with extraordinary caution. Before a crow fully incorporates something new into its understanding of its environment, including a new human, it observes at length, from multiple angles, across multiple days. What it's effectively building is something remarkably close to what we would call a profile. It knows which window you tend to look out of in the morning. It knows whether you move quickly or slowly through your own yard. It knows whether you look up when you hear crow calls nearby, or ignore them completely. It knows whether you put food out consistently, or only sometimes. It knows, critically, whether other crows in the area already trust you. Crow researchers describe this as the bird building a reputation map of every individual human in its territory. People who behave consistently and predictably get mapped as safe. People who behave erratically, aggressively, or unpredictably get mapped as threats. And that classification, once made, is extraordinarily difficult to reverse. You already have a reputation with the crows near your house. The only real question is which kind. But what comes next is something most people find genuinely hard to believe at first. The crow family unit is one of the most socially complex structures found anywhere in the bird world. Crow pairs typically bond for life. Their offspring, often called helpers, frequently remain with the family group for 1 to 5 years, assisting with territory defense, locating food, and raising the next generation of chicks that follow. This means that when a crow family learns something important about a human in their territory, that this person can be trusted, that this person feeds them reliably, that this person once threw a shoe in their direction, that information gets passed directly to the next generation as a matter of course. Research tracking individual crow families across multiple years has documented the transmission of human-specific information from parents to their offspring with remarkable, repeated consistency. Young crows who have never personally interacted with a specific human will show the exact same wariness or the exact same comfort and trust that their parents display purely because they were effectively told, through observed behavior, what to expect. Your reputation with the crows near your home is not limited to whichever birds happen to be alive right now. It is something closer to an inheritance, actively being passed forward through a family line. The crows currently sitting on your fence may be reacting to something you did, or something a previous neighbor did, 2 or 3 years before that specific crow was even born. And if a crow has decided at some point that you represent a threat, understand this clearly. It will not simply move on and forget about it over time. University of Washington research has documented crow grudge behavior persisting for over 17 years in some tracked cases, far longer than the natural lifespan of the individual bird that experienced the original negative encounter. The grudge had been transmitted so thoroughly, generation to generation, that it genuinely outlived the bird that started it. But grudges are only half of this story, and the other half is far more hopeful. Crows also maintain what researchers call positive associations with specific humans, and these turn out to be equally persistent over time. A person who feeds crows regularly, who behaves consistently and calmly around them, who never threatens or startles them even accidentally, builds a relationship of trust that compounds steadily, season after season. Crows in documented positive relationships with specific humans have been observed approaching those individuals voluntarily, waiting for them at roughly the same time each day, and, in one of the most genuinely extraordinary documented behaviors in all of bird research, bringing them gifts, small objects, shiny things, pieces of bent wire, buttons, beads, fragments of glass, left deliberately at the exact spot where that specific human regularly stands or appears. This is not accidental or random scattering. Researchers have confirmed through careful, repeated observation that individual crows specifically bring objects to specific humans who have fed and treated them well. Not to any human at random, but to the precise individual that bird has personally identified as a reliable, positive presence in its world. Crows belong to the corvid family, a group that also includes ravens, jays, and magpies, and cognitive research on corvids over the last 2 decades has produced findings that have genuinely startled the scientific community studying them. New Caledonian crows, studied extensively at Oxford, don't simply use sticks to pull insects from tree bark. They shape and modify those tools to make them measurably more effective. Select raw materials based on specific physical properties, and carry tools they anticipate needing to locations where they plan to use them later. The North American crow in your own backyard demonstrates something equally remarkable: genuine causal reasoning. In a study at Cambridge, crows presented with a floating treat inside a water-filled tube, out of reach, and given access to stones of varying sizes, worked out, with no prior experience of that exact situation, that dropping stones into the tube would raise the water level enough to bring the treat within reach, and they consistently chose the larger stones over the smaller ones, because they understood the underlying relationship between stone size and water displacement. The crow watching you from your fence post is not simply reacting to stimuli in the moment. It is actively thinking about you, drawing conclusions, and making predictions about what you are likely to do next. Crows also possess one of the most complex vocal systems of any bird species studied. Researchers have identified dozens of distinct vocalizations that communicate food location, danger, individual identity, spatial location, emotional state, and detailed social information, going far beyond the simple binary alarm signals most people assume birds are limited to. When a crow directs a specific scolding call at a particular human, it isn't merely expressing irritation in the moment. It is actively broadcasting structured information outward. Other crows within hearing range, which can extend several hundred meters across a neighborhood, receive that signal, process it, identify the specific location of the perceived threat, identify its nature, and respond accordingly, often within seconds. This means a single interaction you have with one crow in your yard, one moment of conflict, or one moment of trust, is potentially heard and processed by dozens of birds spread across your neighborhood almost immediately. Your reputation does not stay contained with one individual bird. It propagates outward through the local population. And when a crow makes a different kind of call, the softer, more varied sounds associated with positive, relaxed social interaction, it broadcasts that exact same way. Crows that are calm and comfortable in your presence communicate that comfort outward. Other crows observe the relaxed behavior of crows they already trust around a specific human, and they update their own internal assessment of that person accordingly. Being trusted by one crow is, in a very real sense, the beginning of being trusted by many. This next part is the one that tends to stay with people the longest. Groups of crows, sometimes numbering in the dozens, will gather silently near a dead crow. They become unusually quiet, striking for a species otherwise known for near-constant vocalization throughout the day. They do not feed during this gathering. They do not engage in any territorial behavior. They simply stay, sometimes for several minutes, occasionally longer, before dispersing on their own. This behavior has been studied directly and interpreted partly as information gathering. Living crows learning something useful about potential danger from the location and condition of the deceased bird. But researchers studying it have noted openly that the behavioral profile of these gatherings appears to exceed what would be strictly necessary for pure information transmission alone. There is something else present in it, something that resembles, without being fully identical to, what we would recognize in ourselves as grief. If you have ever witnessed this directly in your own yard or neighborhood, a sudden, quiet gathering of crows around a still figure on the ground. The unusual silence settling over what is normally a noisy species, the slow eventual dispersal once it's over. You were witnessing something researchers are still actively working to fully understand. And importantly, the crows that gathered there knew exactly where they were, within a territory they had already mapped in detail. Near humans they had already individually assessed long before that moment. They chose that specific place deliberately. Everything described up to this point, the facial recognition, the reputation mapping, the multi-generational transmission of information, the grudges that outlived the bird that started them, works in both directions equally. If the crows near your home have assessed you specifically as safe, as reliable, as a genuinely positive presence within their territory, the relationship that can follow is one of the most remarkable things available to anyone who feeds backyard birds. Not because crows are conventionally charming the way a cardinal might be, but because they are engaging with you as a specific individual, not your yard in general, not your feeder as an object. You, specifically. The practical path here is straightforward. Start leaving food consistently. Unsalted peanuts in the shell are about as universally accepted as anything you can offer, at the same spot, at roughly the same time, every single day. Stay visible without being intrusive about it. Speak calmly if you speak at all near them. Avoid sudden movements entirely. Let them approach you rather than the other way around. Within a matter of weeks, the crows in your territory will have meaningfully updated their assessment of you. Within months, you may genuinely find them waiting for you at the expected time, calling in a way that sounds noticeably different from their sharper alarm calls, lower, more varied, almost conversational in tone. And one day, you may find something small and unmistakably shiny left deliberately on the railing or post where you always stand. That is not an accident, and it never has been. That is a crow telling you, in the only language available to it, that you have been seen, genuinely seen, by a mind considerably more complex than most people ever realize is watching them every single day. If this changed how you'll think about the crows in your neighborhood, subscribe to What Birds Know and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. And tell me in the comments, has a crow ever left you something? Or made you feel genuinely recognized? I read every single one, and the crow stories are always the most extraordinary.